You are not here by coincidence. Something far deeper than chance has led you to this moment, to these very words. By the time you finish listening, you may begin to sense why. Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung once wrote of a wisdom beyond the conscious mind, a knowing that predates thought, one that whispers to us before we even take our first steps. This is the voice of the soul, subtle yet undeniable, like a compass hidden beneath the surface of everyday life. From an early age, some souls feel this pull more strongly than others. While most children are easily absorbed by the noise of the world, games, competition, and approval, there are those who seem born with a kind of homesickness, a strange longing for something they cannot yet name. You may remember it yourself, watching others laugh over trivial things while you wondered silently about suffering, justice, or the stars above. Where others were content with answers on the surface, you needed to know what lay beneath. This was not arrogance, it was memory. A faint echo from somewhere beyond time that reminded you you were here for something more. And even when that made you feel different, misunderstood, or even lonely, you could never fully silence that inner certainty. It was like a small flame that refused to die, even when the winds of doubt blew hardest. Many cultures across history have recognized such souls. In ancient Greece, children who asked too many questions were sometimes thought to carry the spark of the philosophers. In remote tribes, a boy or girl who gazed too long at the moon or heard voices in the wind might be chosen as a shaman, believed to have one foot already in the spirit world. In medieval Europe, mystics like Hildegard of Bingen spoke of visions from childhood, moments of revelation that no schooling could have planted. And in the East, Hindu and Buddhist traditions often describe such children as old souls, returning with knowledge carried from lifetimes past. Maybe you too have felt that disconnection, as if the world you were born into didn't fully explain the world you felt inside. It wasn't emptiness. It was a sign, a reminder that your soul's path would never be identical to everyone else's. Where others pursued only the visible, wealth, approval, comfort, you were already searching for the invisible, for meaning. And though this inner certainty sometimes weighed heavily, it has always been there, whispering in the silence of your mind, remember. Because the sense that life holds more than appearances, that you were meant to awaken something forgotten, is not something taught. It is something you were born with. The philosophers called it an inner logos. The mystics called it divine spark. Jung called it the collective unconscious. Whatever the name, the truth is the same. Within you there is knowledge older than your body. Perhaps as a child you felt like an outsider, watching the play of life unfold, as though from a distance. You may have even wondered if you belonged at all. But that distance was not a flaw. It was your soul reminding you that this life was not your first, that you had walked this path before, and that you had chosen to return, to learn, to transform, to awaken again. This is the first sign, the quiet certainty that your path would never be ordinary. For even when you tried to silence it, this feeling has never abandoned you. Like a flame hidden in the heart of stone, it has waited for the moment you would remember what you came here to do. From your earliest years, you may have carried questions that unsettled those around you. While other children wondered about toys, games, and friendships, you asked what suffering meant, why people die, or what lies beyond the sky. To many, these seemed like curiosities too heavy for a young mind. But for you, they arose naturally, as though carried from a place beyond time. This wasn't a game of imagination. It was an inheritance. The soul does not forget as easily as the mind does, and for certain souls, childhood is less about discovery than about remembering. A fragment of memory, faint but insistent, pulled you to look beyond the surface of things, to sense meanings others overlooked. Maybe you noticed beauty in small, fleeting gestures, a bird alighting on a branch, an old woman's weathered hands, a single candle burning in a darkened room. These were not accidents of perception. They were the first echoes of memory. Subtle reminders that you were not here to chase the noise of life, but to recognize its hidden music. Cultures across the world have long seen such children as different. In indigenous American traditions, a child who looked too long into the fire or spoke to unseen companions was thought to have vision. In Japan, those who carried strange sensitivity were sometimes guided into the path of monks destined to interpret dreams and omens. And in Africa, the Dagara people of Burkina Faso believe that children who cry endlessly are not weak, but are grieving for the world they left behind before birth. These beliefs may seem distant, but they all echo the same truth. Some souls arrive carrying more than one lifetime's worth of memory. Perhaps you felt misunderstood because of this. Adults may have told you to stop asking questions, to focus on what was practical, to learn the rules and play along. But no matter how hard you tried, the questions never left. They resurfaced at night when the world grew quiet, or in small moments when you gazed into the distance. And though you couldn't explain it, you sensed that life itself was speaking to you through silence. This sense of being an outsider, watching the world rather than fully belonging to it, wasn't emptiness. It was awareness. It was your soul's way of reminding you that you came here not only to live, but to awaken. And while that awakening was subtle in your early years, it was unmistakable. It was not arrogance. It was not imagination. It was the beginning of remembering. Because even then, your soul already knew what your mind could not yet grasp, that you were here for something greater, and that nothing superficial could ever fully satisfy you. There comes a moment when the longing of the soul is no longer just a quiet inner whisper. Life itself begins to shape it through experience. And for those who carry an ancient memory within them, those experiences are rarely simple. The second sign that your soul chose this path long before birth is the presence of profound trials. At first, they seem cruel, like storms with no reason, like punishments without cause. Yet when you look deeper, you realize these were not accidents. They were teachers. Loss, heartbreak, sudden endings. These are the chisels that carve the raw stone of the soul into something more defined. They are the furnaces where hidden strength is forged, and though the pain may have seemed unbearable at the time, your endurance was never born of mere stubbornness. It came from a deeper reservoir, a sacred resilience that awakens only in those who have chosen this path. History is filled with stories of such trials. The young prince Siddhartha, who would become the Buddha, left behind his palace only after witnessing sickness, old age, and death. These sights shattered his illusions, but opened the way to enlightenment. In ancient Sparta, boys were torn from their homes at a young age, subjected to brutal hardships, not to break them, but to awaken strength and discipline. Among the indigenous peoples of North America, vision quests often involved days of solitude without food or water, pushing the body to its limits so that the spirit might finally speak. Your trials may not have looked so dramatic, but they carried the same essence. They arrived uninvited, without warning, as if life itself singled you out for testing. And perhaps you wondered why misfortune seemed to find you more often than others. Yet even in the moments of collapse, something inside you refused to disappear. A silent flame remained steady, reminding you that this, too, had meaning. The truth is, the soul that chooses a conscious path does not seek comfort. It does not ask for an easy life. It asks for growth, for remembrance, for awakening. And those things cannot be given by ease. They are born only in fire. Perhaps you faced the sudden loss of someone you loved. Perhaps you walked through nights of loneliness so vast they seemed to swallow you whole. Perhaps you endured failures that shattered the identity you had built for yourself. And while others might have dismissed such moments as bad luck, you felt their weight, their depth. You knew instinctively that something was being revealed in the breaking. For every loss carved into you a hollow, but not a hollow of despair. It was a vessel being prepared, emptied of illusions so that truth could enter. Every painful moment was not only a wound, but also a doorway, because these trials were never punishments. They were sacred agreements, moments your soul had accepted long before you arrived here. And while your mind struggled to understand them, your soul knew this was the path it had chosen. Pain has a way of stripping away every illusion. It arrives uninvited, sudden, merciless, and yet within it lies a paradox. It is both the destroyer and the revealer. For those walking a conscious path, pain is not just an accident of fate. It is the alchemy through which the soul is transformed. Think back to the moments that nearly broke you, the losses that hollowed your chest, the nights you lay awake, asking questions no one could answer. At the time, it may have seemed that life itself was against you, conspiring to strip you of everything familiar. And yet, with distance, you see the truth. Those moments did not erase you. They uncovered you. Carl Jung believed that wholeness is not achieved by chasing perfection, but by embracing shadow, facing the wounds and contradictions that the ego desperately tries to avoid. In the breaking, the soul remembers its own depth. The cracks in your life are not flaws. They are openings, places where the light of awareness enters. History is filled with figures who were remade through suffering. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor-philosopher, wrote his meditations not in comfort, but while leading armies through war and plague. His wisdom was not a luxury. It was born in hardship. Teresa of Avila, a mystic of the 16th century, endured years of illness, persecution, and doubt. Yet from that pain came visions of divine union that reshaped Christian spirituality. Even in myth, suffering becomes the forge of transformation. Hercules does not ascend to immortality without trials, and Prometheus endures endless torment to bring fire to humankind. Your story may not carry the weight of empires or myths, but it is no less profound. Every heartbreak you endured, every failure that forced you to rebuild, every silence that swallowed you whole, these were the chisels that sculpted you into someone more authentic. They stripped away the masks, the borrowed truths, the comforts that no longer aligned with who you were becoming. And in that stripping, something unexpected appeared: resilience. Not the loud resilience of pride, but the quiet kind that endures when everything else collapses. Like a flame sheltered in the hollow of the hand, your inner strength refused to die. This is why your pain was never meaningless. It was a process of remembrance. It was life showing you that even in collapse, there is creation. Even in endings, there are beginnings. The soul does not choose trials to destroy itself. It chooses them to awaken. And the very moments that seem designed to undo you have in fact revealed your truest self, the one not built on appearances, but on truth. Because transformation does not happen in ease. It happens in fire. And you have walked through fire and emerged not broken, but reshaped. If pain was the fire that reshaped you, then sensitivity was the tool you carried into the flames. For many, sensitivity is seen as fragility, an inability to harden oneself against the world. But for those walking a deeper path, sensitivity is not weakness. It is the very sign that the soul came equipped with a higher form of perception. This is the third sign, a sensitivity that goes far beyond emotion, one that touches the very fabric of reality. You feel not just with the heart, but with the soul. You perceive what others miss, the tension in a room, the sorrow behind a smile, the silent ache carried in another's eyes. Where most people move only through the visible, you move also through the invisible. This has been with you since the beginning. You may have found yourself overwhelmed by places where others felt nothing: a crowded market, a noisy street, a room full of forced laughter. To them, it was ordinary. To you, it was unbearable, because your soul was registering the hidden weight of every unspoken emotion. Throughout history, those with such perception were seen not as fragile, but as chosen. The shamans of Siberia were said to hear the voices of spirits in the wind. In ancient Israel, prophets trembled under visions they could not control, their sensitivity to the unseen so sharp it tore at their bodies. Among the Celtic Druids, the gift of feeling nature's rhythms was revered as a sacred responsibility. You too have carried this gift, even if no one around you recognized it. Perhaps they told you to toughen up, to stop feeling so much, to ignore what your body and spirit were screaming. But you knew, even if you could not explain it, that your sensitivity was not a curse. It was a compass. And yet sensitivity is not easy to bear. It exposes you to more pain than others might ever feel. A casual word that others dismiss can pierce you like a blade. The grief of someone else can settle into your chest as if it were your own. Even silence, something most ignore, can weigh on you with an intensity you cannot describe. But here is the truth. Sensitivity is not fragility. It is awareness. It is the language through which your soul perceives reality beyond the surface. Carl Jung suggested that such heightened perception is a sign of the unconscious speaking more loudly, a bridge between what is hidden and what can be known. And when you look at your life, you see this bridge clearly. Times when you just knew something was wrong. Moments when intuition guided you to safety. Decisions you made not from logic, but from a certainty deeper than thought. Your sensitivity has always been your teacher. It has shaped the way you connect to others, the way you seek authenticity, the way you reject the hollow. For while many navigate life through noise, you navigate through silence. And in a world that often sleeps, your sensitivity is the sign that you are awake. To carry such sensitivity is to walk through life unarmored. Where others build walls, you remain exposed. And that exposure is both your burden and your power. There were likely times when you tried to silence it, to harden yourself against the weight of what you felt. You may have convinced yourself that if you could just stop noticing so much, stop absorbing the moods of others, stop feeling the invisible currents in every room, you would finally fit in. But shutting it off was never possible, because to silence your sensitivity would be to silence your essence. This is why it sometimes feels heavy, even unbearable. You have felt drained after spending only an hour in a crowded space. You have carried emotions that were not even yours, walking home with a heaviness you could not explain. A conversation, an avoided glance. Even the absence of someone's voice. These left marks on you that others would never notice. And perhaps you asked yourself, why me? Why do I feel so much more deeply than others? But history reminds us that those who feel the most are often those entrusted with the most. The bodhisattvas of Buddhist tradition vowed to keep returning to the world until every being found freedom, an act of unimaginable compassion born from profound sensitivity. In Sufi mysticism, the saints known as wali wept for humanity not out of despair, but because they felt the pain of separation from the divine as if it were their own. And in early Christianity, the Desert Fathers fled into silence, not to escape the world, but to protect their hearts from noise so they could listen to God more clearly. You may not see yourself in saints or mystics, but you carry the same thread, sensitivity as sacred responsibility. It is not here to crush you. It is here to refine you. And so what feels like a burden in one moment becomes your sharpest instrument in another. Your intuition has saved you from paths that would have led only to emptiness. Your empathy has allowed you to see behind the masks others wear, to witness truths they themselves were afraid to admit. Your perception has guided you to relationships, decisions, and moments of clarity that logic could never have delivered. Yes, it has made you vulnerable, but it has also made you real. In a world that numbs itself with noise and distraction, your capacity to feel deeply is not a weakness. It is resistance. It is the soul insisting on truth in a landscape of illusions. This is the paradox of sensitivity. It wounds, but it also reveals. It exposes, but it also protects. It sets you apart, but it also aligns you with something greater than yourself. Because while others navigate the world through appearances, you navigate it through essence, and that is not a curse. It is your most powerful gift. No matter how far you drift, no matter how much you try to drown your awareness in the noise of the world, something always calls you back. This is the fourth sign, the soul's unshakable return inward. Perhaps you've tried to escape it. You sought the comfort of normal life, following the maps others drew: study, work, stability, success. You may have convinced yourself that if you could only fit into society's rhythm, the restless longing inside you would quiet. And for a time, it may have seemed to work. But inevitably, the silence returned. The questions resurfaced. The disconnection gnawed. This is not coincidence. It is design. Before you were born, your soul made an agreement that whenever you strayed too far from yourself, life would bring you back. And life, faithful to that promise, has done so again and again. Sometimes the return was gentle, a sudden insight, a dream, a chance encounter that stirred something inside you. Other times it was brutal, a collapse of everything you thought you wanted, losses that stripped your world bare, crises that forced you to face yourself with raw honesty. To the mind, these events seemed cruel. To the soul, they were reminders. History offers countless examples of this pattern. Augustine of Hippo, a man of indulgence and distraction, could not escape the call of his soul. After years of resistance, he returned inward and became one of the most influential voices in Christian thought. The poet Rumi lost his beloved teacher and was shattered by grief, but that pain became the doorway through which he returned to the divine within. Even Siddhartha Gautama, before his enlightenment as the Buddha, wandered through paths of luxury and paths of extreme asceticism, only to realize that both were distractions from the center he was meant to return to. Your story is no different. Every time you abandoned yourself, life stirred. Every time you tried to silence your inner voice, life grew louder. Discomfort, restlessness, even despair. They were not punishments. They were signposts pointing you back to your essence. The soul does not tolerate disconnection for long, and so what feels like collapse is often only clearing. The structures that no longer serve you must fall so that space can be made for what is true. Yes, it hurts to let go. Yes, it feels like losing everything. But emptiness is not the enemy. It is the soil where remembrance takes root. You were not meant to live asleep. You were meant to awaken, again and again, each time more deeply. That is why, even after the hardest losses, you have always found yourself returning. Not weaker, but clearer. Not broken, but more whole. The return inward is not failure. It is fulfillment. It is the soul remembering what the world wants you to forget, that your path is not outside. It is within. Every crisis you have endured has carried a strange duality. On the surface, it seemed like destruction, but beneath, it was rebirth. This is the hidden nature of collapse. It doesn't come to erase you, it comes to dismantle what can no longer hold the weight of your truth. When the foundations of your life cracked, when careers, relationships, or identities you clung to suddenly fell apart, you may have felt abandoned. You may have believed you had failed. Yet, as time passed, you began to see that what crumbled was not your essence. It was the false scaffolding built around it. Ancient cultures knew this well. The phoenix of Egyptian and Greek myth must burn before it rises. In Hindu cosmology, the god Shiva is not only the destroyer, but also the one who makes creation possible again. Even in human history, whole civilizations have fallen only to give birth to something new. The Great Fire of London in 1666 destroyed thousands of homes, yet from its ashes arose a redesigned city. Rome collapsed under the weight of empire, but from its ruins came Renaissance thinkers who reshaped the Western world. Your personal collapses are no different. When illusions break, they create space. The space to remember who you are without masks. The space to release roles that suffocate your essence. The space to begin again, this time more aligned with the truth of your soul. Yes, collapse is terrifying. It strips you bare. It leaves you staring at emptiness, wondering if you can ever rebuild. But that emptiness is sacred. It is the silence in which the seeds of transformation germinate. Perhaps you've noticed that after each collapse, clarity arrived. Not immediately, not easily, but eventually. Out of heartbreak came the realization of what love truly meant. Out of failure came the courage to walk a path no one else understood. Out of silence came the voice you had been waiting for all along. This is why collapse is never final. It is a teacher disguised as chaos. It shows you that nothing temporary can define you, that everything false will eventually fall away. And while the world may mourn the ruins, the soul rejoices in the clearing. Because collapse is not the end of your story, it is the beginning of the truest chapter. Beneath every doubt, every moment of despair, there has always been something steady inside you. A silent certainty that your life is not random, that you did not arrive here by accident. This is the fifth sign, the quiet purpose that pulses within you, even when nothing outside confirms it. You may not always have had clarity. There were seasons when you felt lost, unsure of where to turn, disconnected from everything familiar. Yet even in those times, a subtle force urged you forward. It was not loud, not dramatic. It was like a seed buried deep in the soil, unseen but alive, waiting for its moment to bloom. This sense of purpose is not about achievements or recognition. It is not measured by how the world defines success. Sometimes it reveals itself in ways so small and hidden that only you can feel them. In the way you hold space for another's pain. In the honesty with which you choose your path. In the refusal to betray your own truth even when silence would be easier. Philosophers across centuries have spoken of this inner certainty. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, wrote that each of us is born with a unique role, a duty woven into the fabric of the cosmos. Kierkegaard, the Danish thinker, called it the call of the self, a demand that one live authentically rather than by imitation. And Carl Jung believed that each life carries within it the seeds of individuation, the drive to become fully and uniquely oneself. Perhaps you've felt it as a restlessness that no material thing could satisfy. No amount of success, wealth, or approval could silence the quiet voice inside whispering, "There is more." Perhaps you've wondered why you could never quite fit in, why the games others played seemed shallow, why you longed for depth when everyone else seemed content with surfaces. This longing is not weakness. It is alignment. It is your soul remembering the reason it chose this life. And though the shape of your purpose may not yet be clear, its presence is undeniable. It is what has carried you through despair, what has lifted you when everything else crumbled. It is the hidden thread weaving your story together, even when you cannot see the pattern. The world may never understand it. You may not always be able to explain it, but you feel it, and that feeling is proof enough. Because purpose does not need permission. It does not need applause. It only needs to be lived, quietly, steadily, faithfully. And every time you choose truth over illusion, depth over distraction, presence over sleep, you are living it. All along, your life has carried these signs like hidden constellations, faint but undeniable. From the first whisper of longing in childhood, to the storms of trial, to the gift of sensitivity, to the inevitable return inward, to the quiet certainty of purpose. Each moment has been part of a larger pattern. And when you step back, you begin to see it. This was never random. It was a sacred agreement. Carl Jung once suggested that life truly begins the day we listen to the voice within, the voice that has been whispering since before our birth. For you, that voice has always been there, guiding, nudging, waiting. And the fact that you are here now, listening to these words, is itself no coincidence. It is memory resurfacing. Across cultures, myths remind us of this same truth, that life is not about learning something new, but about remembering what the soul already knows. In Plato's philosophy, all knowledge is anamnesis, a recollection of truths the soul knew before incarnation. In Hinduism, the path of Dharma is not invented, but rediscovered, the life you were always meant to walk. In Buddhism, awakening is described not as becoming something new, but as seeing clearly what has always been. And perhaps you feel it even now, as if something inside is stirring, something ancient yet familiar, the realization that you are not here merely to exist. You are here to awaken. This awakening does not happen all at once. It unfolds in layers, through trials, through silences, through choices made in honesty. Sometimes it feels heavy, sometimes it feels lonely, but always it is real. And the more you honor it, the clearer it becomes. The truth is, your soul did not choose comfort. It chose depth. It did not choose to forget. It chose to remember. And every challenge, every collapse, every moment of tenderness has been part of that remembrance. So, if you have ever wondered why you feel different, why the world has often felt shallow, why your heart beats with a longing you cannot explain, know this. It is because you came with a mission, not to imitate, not to confirm, but to embody truth in a world that often forgets it. You do not need to understand it all right now. You do not need to have the map. You only need to keep listening, to the silence, to the signs, to the quiet certainty that has never abandoned you. Because the journey is not about becoming, it is about awakening to what you already are. And if these words resonate with you, it is not by chance. It is your soul recognizing what it has always known, that no matter how far you drift, no matter how many times you forget, the truth of who you are will always find its way back to you. This is remembering. This is awakening. This is the path you chose long before you were born.